when you say you are against racism, you are against homophobia, you are against Islamophobia, and all the good causes that people stand up for, are you saying that you really like to see a world where these things do not exist? Or are you saying you would want a world where you will be on the giving end rather than being on the receiving end? On the 8th of this month, Adele, and please don't tell me you don't know Adele. Hello, it's me. Oh yes, that's Adele. You know, superstar, brilliant artist, swept loads of awards in the Brits Award, and I'm sure you know what the Brits Award is. It's the Grammy of the UK. I know many people don't realize that some of the big artists that we celebrate thinking they're American artists are actually UK-based artists. We're talking about people like Elton John, Phil Collins, Ed Sheeran, Stormzy, Adele, who I've mentioned already, and some very big names are actually British or UK artists. And so these are the people who get awarded in the Brits Award. And so Adele, I mean, it was her day on the 8th because she swept awards. One of the awards she got is the Best Artist of the Year award. Now, that award used to be, before 2021, used to be Best Female or Best Male Artist of the Year. But in 2021, that's last year, Sam Smith, oh, won't you stay with me? Yes, that's Sam Smith. He criticized the award because they couldn't really find where to fit him in the award because he identifies as non-binary. By non-binary, he neither fits, according to his understanding of himself, he neither fits perfectly into the female gender or the male gender. And so even if you're not familiar with the word non-binary, I'm sure you see recently, you see people's names, like my name is Simeon, right? So you see Simeon in a bracket, he, him, means I identify as male, or somebody else, you see she, her, means she identifies as female. So in the case of Sam Smith, it's, you see Sam Smith and in the bracket they, them. That means he neither identifies as male or female. And these concepts are, to my greatest amazement, are some concepts that people are finding really difficult to accept in certain parts of the world, like in Nigeria. You still find people who are still very extreme on these topics and on these concepts. I don't know if it's lack of education or this religious extremism, where, I mean, that religious territory is that place where people's common sense just shuts down. Where some people, in the name of religion, I mean, Nigeria is one of the most religious countries in the world. So you would expect that in such societies, people will be more welcoming and more open. But the reverse is actually the case, because some people just don't use their common sense anymore. And so in those societies, people are a bit angry and are a bit hostile to such ideologies. But I don't think that should be the case. I share a story. When I was a lot younger, I remember my mom going to visit a neighbor whose daughter put to bed. And when she came back home, the whole conversation that day was around the children that were born, because in the language of my mom, they had both male and female genitalia or genitals, and it was to them it was a very strange idea. You mean all manner of conspiracy theories around the whole thing. But that being an extreme example, you cannot tell me that you haven't seen people who obviously would not fit perfectly into your definition or society's definition of normal male or normal female. I used to have this neighbor, a lady a mother of 3, who had facial hair, hair on her chest, male build and male voice tone, who obviously in that kind of society would have to, identify as female. And so you cannot deny that there are certain people who are unique in the way they were created. This, the scientific or medical term for these things is DSD. Some say it's development in sex, difference in sex development, which is what I prefer to use. Some would say it's disorder in sex or sex development, which for me is quite extreme. A disorder, in my view, is something you can fix, and some would argue that these things can be fixed, but in most cases they end up damaging these people in the bid of trying to fix. So if you recognize that these people are there and that's how they are created, rather than trying to force them into your definition of norm, I think it's common sense and it's normal to accept people the way God created them, especially if we are as religious as we claim to be. But that's a bit of a long stretch. That's a conversation that I believe in those societies is still going to last for a while. But it kind of beats my imagination why one of the most religious countries in the world would be one of the most intolerant to some of these things. But again, when you talk about religion, you're moving to a territory where most people just thinking just shuts down. When you start talking religion, some people just put their common sense to sleep because but that's not the main point of conversation here. So Adele got loads of awards in 2022, and while taking the award of the best artist, so no longer the best female artist, she said that I understand why the name of this award has changed, but I do love being a woman. I love being a female artist. And that statement angered some people, and I just couldn't understand why you who claim to be, somebody whose view or whose expression of themselves should be respected would speak against or would be offended by such a fundamental statement. And that's why I'm beginning to wonder if in this age and time, people who queue up screaming at the top of their voice of how much they want to be respected, but these same people sometimes then turn around and start attacking Jews and attacking people who are of opposing ideas and of opposing views. And I begin to wonder, so are you actually saying these things are bad, or are you saying it's bad when I'm on the receiving end but absolutely fine when I'm on the giving end? That's not the kind of world I would like to live in. I'm looking forward to a world where we all agree that if it is wrong for me to be discriminated against, then it is also wrong for me to discriminate against other people. Yes, I understand that these awards must be inclusive, such that such people would be included in the entire award. But what keeps surprising me, or one question I keep asking is, why wasn't the Brits Award adjusted in such a way that you have 3 categories? You've got the male, the female, and then the non-binary. Yes, of course, there will be arguments for and against that. One of the arguments that the Brits Award put forward about that is that art is not about gender, age, or sex, or whatever. Art is about creativity, and the idea is to focus on what art is about and not about gender. But again, is it actually possible for us to separate gender from these things? Because gender is something very, very fundamental and basic. And by saying you want to eliminate male, female category, aren't you cancelling to an extent people who would still like to be recognized as females and as males? And while I was trying to work on this video, this recording, I saw in news on LBC, and it just added to what I was trying to talk about. So it reads, schools have been encouraged, this is news today in the UK, schools have been encouraged to drop the use of gendered terms such as sir and miss, and instead opt for gender neutral languages. And my question is, what then happens to teachers who would like to still be identified as Mr., Miss, or Mrs.? Because wouldn't it be easier for people to let the young people know, or the students know, what they would like to be addressed as, and then include them rather than exclude some other people, because there's this tendency to, in the bid to try to bring a minority group into the bigger picture, you would kind of eliminate the majority group. An inclusive society is not one where opposing or conflicting ideas do not meet. It's one where these opposing ideas meet with open arms ready for embrace, rather than arms that are up in arms, if you see what I mean. So rather than go out there and try to make life impossible for other people simply because you think they are discriminating against you, what I think we should be doing is trying to make life, comfortable for everybody, irrespective of what you believe. Does that make any sense? Irrespective of what you believe. And I also want to use this opportunity to talk to people who still have this closed mind about certain ideas. I'm talking about myself a couple of years ago. I used to have certain extreme views about certain things, probably because I didn't have real understanding of these things, or the extreme behavior of certain people who are in these categories may have pushed me and some other people to these extremes. But then you arrive at a point where you now tell yourself that, well, the wrong behavior of certain people should not force me into someone that I am not. And so an inclusive society, a society the kind that I look forward to, is one where everybody can express themselves as freely as they can. A society where people don't try to chisel themselves into a fragment of what they originally are, simply because that's what society wants them to be. If you believe that people are created unique, then it's high time we look at everybody and accept them just the way they are. And in the bid to do that, we must also be careful not to cancel those who we think are the majority and will never mind. Because again, what you're trying to do is to force them into an extreme state in terms of that idea or the concept you're trying to push. So that's the short word I've got to share with us today. If you are against racism, you're against homophobia, you're against Islamophobia, you are up for any good cause, be careful not to be perceived as someone who is actually against the other thing or the idea on the other side. Rather, present yourself as someone who wants to be respected, wants to be heard, but also would like to respect others and would like to listen to others. Thank you very much for watching this video to the end. I'd like to have you around, so please subscribe to my channel and stay in touch as we'll keep releasing relevant materials that will be beneficial to you. Thank you very much.